Wherever you are on your leadership voyage, it starts here.
Hey, everybody. Welcome again to Leadership Voyage, the podcast dedicated to your pursuit of becoming a great leader. My name is Jason Wick, your host. Feel free to reach out to me anytime at startyourvoyage@gmail.com. That is startyourvoyage@gmail.com. Let's see. Today's episode is, I really like this episode, and I'll tell you why. It is something that I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it. And I'll walk you through the process. Let's start with the end. Today's episode is about writing your resume. I mean, it's about looking for a job more generally, but it's about writing your resume. And as I've shared earlier, I was laid off back in December, and that got me more interested in what's going on with the job market and the job application process. Of course, because I've been going through that, but being laid off inspired me to start my own business and all these other things. But the point of this is, uh, I wasn't really sure how deep to get into the topic of applying for jobs. Because number one, it was something that was affecting me. I wasn't sure how much listeners would be interested. But the reason it's the most interesting to me overall is actually because I wasn't sure if it was in the spirit of the show. I wasn't sure if the process of finding a job was aligned with the mission of helping people improve their leadership skills wherever they're at. And our guest today, Chen, is someone who I have known through social media off and on for, I think it's probably 3 years. We didn't know each other personally, but we met through social media, through just interactions, and we got to chatting. And I asked him if he would be interested in coming on this show for this topic, because he's been mentoring others and working with others on their resumes. And it made me realize that it's worth doing this episode because, number one, finding the right job opportunity is like the ultimate professional leading yourself. It's the ultimate professional version of leading yourself. It's a tough process. Or maybe you start your own thing. I mean, where is there more courage professionally, perhaps, than something like that? Starting your own thing and actually going for it when you're afraid. Although that sounds a little egocentric now that I realize I'm saying that out loud, since that's what I did. But what my point is it's easy for us to be afraid to try something new. And a layoff or looking for a new job is an opportunity to redefine who you are, to know yourself, to try to align what you're best at with what you're going to do next. And that's leadership with yourself. And in this episode with Sherman, that's actually where we start the discussion off. Is if you want to write a good resume, you need to know yourself. And I think that's a really cool angle. I don't know that I've ever thought of it that way before. So if you're not interested at all in the job application process or writing a resume, although I do know that 51% of you who have jobs are looking anyway, if you're not interested, that's fine. You can skip this episode and come back for the next one, right? Totally fine. But if you manage others, you might get a little insight into what they're looking for and why they might be looking elsewhere. Or if you're looking for a job yourself, this will be full of pragmatic advice that you can use. Just take a couple pieces. If you're looking for jobs, either after a layoff or while you still are employed currently, this interview is full of practical advice that you can take with you. And that's what I'm excited about. So I'm glad we did this episode. This was way too long of an opening, so I apologize for that, but I wanted to explain the thought process of not being sure whether or not we should do this topic, but ultimately glad that we did it. Everybody, get ready for a really insightful episode with Sherman Chen. All right, everybody. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of Leadership Voyage. And I am very happy to be joined by Sherman Chen out in Irvine, California. How are you doing today, Sherman?
Good, good. It's a little early in the morning, so if I started dozing off, you know what happened.
If you start dozing off, that's my fault, without a doubt, because that means there aren't very good questions. But yes, I was going to thank you as well. I'm in Mountain Time, you're in Pacific Time, and thanks for getting up early with us today and sharing your expertise on a very important topic. We're going to talk about the process of looking for a job and kind of specifically focusing on resumes, which I think a lot of folks will find important because even those who still are employed right now, about half of them are looking for jobs too. So I think this will be helpful for everybody. Now, before we get down to business, you and I met a couple of months ago, and it came to light that you are a big Star Wars fan. I think you had a big Lego set in the distance in that room that we were talking. Do you have any good Disney Plus recommendations for the folks out there?
Actually, I mean, one of the things that I really enjoyed watching the last few weeks was a documentary on Disney Plus about Industrial Light and Magic.
Yeah.
And they have the first season, which is mostly concentrated on Star Wars, and then about how they branched off into other movies and stuff like that. And then the second season, they just dropped it a few weeks ago, which is kind of like it's still more about Star Wars, but it has also talk about some of the other special effects that they're doing. And because things are moving into the computer space, it's just kind of opened up something extremely interesting. And I'm always interested in figuring out how things work. So I find it very enjoyable. And at one point, they're talking about how they did the special effects for Twister and how to do the tornado. And it's all mathematical. It's mathematical models. And then they utter something about a Fourier transform, and I go, wait a minute, I know that.
Makes you feel smart, right?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, that's kind of one of the occupational hazards as a math major and a computer science major and a business major. You get sucked into these kind of things, and then all of a sudden your professional mind just turns on and starts figuring out things out, and you can't go, I shouldn't be doing that. I'm supposed to be enjoying this thing.
Right. Tough to stop the wheels from turning. It's funny you bring that example up. I have not watched the ILM show, but thanks for that recommendation. I worked way back in the day. I worked at Lucasfilm, and some of the ILM folks were in the building right next door. And it's funny you mentioned the not being able to turn things off, because for me, I was a music major, professional musician, and so on, a composer. And so for me, it took many years to untrain myself to just enjoy the score in a movie as opposed to continually analyzing what I was hearing in a movie. So I can relate to what you were saying. Thanks for that recommendation. That's wonderful. I was going to say, you're a guy with a lot of experience, a strong academic background, as you said, math and business major. You went to NYU, and you're also feeling the pull, the draw. From what I understand, mentorship is an important thing to you. And I think that's what we're going to get into a little bit here, is how you've been helping people in your network with their resumes and with their job search more generally too, right? So let's jump into the mindset of someone who is currently looking for a new opportunity, and just kind of more strategically, okay? Let's help somebody get inside their own mind. Like in terms of fit, when it comes to someone trying to figure out what they're looking for in their next opportunity, what are some of the things that they should be considering first?
Well, I think the most important things that they should consider is how well do they know about themselves. I mean, I think that's extremely important. If you don't know yourself well enough, it's really hard to then decipher what kind of company you want to work for, what kind of positions you want to look for and grow into. Um, and I think that is really the key when you're doing the job search. I mean, like for me, I mean, like I have worked for large organizations, I've worked for startups, I've worked for small organizations, and I find myself liking the startup and the small organizations much more than I do the large organizations, partly because large organizations has a lot of bureaucracy. I get bored. Smaller company, startup, they're more chaotic, but decision got made. I can make the decisions. I don't have to, get approval from 20 other people before I can do something. So I think that's really important, and then the next things somebody should be looking for is really not just what you're looking for right now, is also what you can grow into. I mean, what is the possibility of you moving into another role later on once you landed that positions, and I think that the size of the company, the culture of the company, they all kind of play into this because I mean I like to tell people that like getting a job is kind of like getting married. You have to like the company that you work for. You have to like the people that you work for. Otherwise, why are you doing this? I mean, like money is a factor, but it shouldn't be the all-consuming factor. You can't keep telling yourself that, they're paying me, $500,000 to do this job. And I hated this company and I hated the people I work for.
Yeah, I mean, that's good advice. Starting at first from knowing yourself, what your tendencies and preferences are. And then I kind of like that comparison to a marriage. Not only that you got to like the person, you got to like where you're working, the people you're working with, but it's also interesting because things evolve and change, right? And where are you going next? I love that angle to think through. So thanks for bringing that up. I mean, like we said, you're thinking about helping. Well, you have been helping other folks with their job searches, trying to help folks get inside the mindset of like, what's their strategy for looking for work. When it comes to the landscape we're facing right now, by the time this episode airs, it'll be June or July of 2025. When we're talking about that time period, here, what is so challenging right now for folks when they're looking for work?
There's a couple of things. I mean, every industry kind of work the same way. When one company starts to lay off people, then the other company has to join the bandwagon and says, "Oh my God, I better start laying off people too
Yep.
because I want to be, in the in group." And it doesn't really matter where they really needed to lay off people or not. But truth be told, most company, should lose a few pounds. Um, so in that sense, I mean, you're going to be in a very crowded place, especially with a lot of these government layoffs. Also, I mean, not only are you competing with other people from companies in the same industry, you're now competing with a lot more people, and you have to understand that it's going to be a long drawn process. I mean, it's not like the old days where you can find a job in 2 weeks or in a month. I mean, I've known people who have been out for 6 months. I've known people who have been out for a year. So you just have to have the persistencies to just keep going at it, but not in a way that is a all-consuming kind of thing. It's something that you do a couple, you spend a couple hours doing it and you walk away, you do other things. And
Yeah.
and I think that's kind of the climates that you're looking at. I mean, like even in the June July timeframe.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that is really the number one challenge. And just don't be discouraged about it.
Yeah, that's good advice again. Um, yeah, I definitely know many folks who've been looking for several quarters, as you say, right? They've been looking for a long time and knowing what you're in for. There's a lot to be said for that. And the domino effect of companies laying off and then others feeling they need to to make the markets perceive them a certain way, as you're pointing out. Very interesting factors to consider as well. But I love the advice. Try not to be discouraged. Put a couple of high impact hours in at a time. Walk away. Really good advice for folks for navigating the climate we're in. So those first couple questions, they kind of, give us this kind of the context that we're talking about. So many folks facing layoffs in these last couple of years, particularly in tech, in IT, the realms that you and I have worked in. We also have many folks who are currently employed, continuing to look for other work. And what we're going to focus in on today is kind of the specifics of resumes. And I appreciate you getting into this topic with us, because the resume is that first impression, right? It's the speed dating of every company's first glimpse at you. And I think it's worth taking the time to really go through some questions. So Sherman, as you and I prepared for this, we decided we would do what we're kind of calling a rapid fire. And for everyone listening, not a rapid fire like I ask the question and then Sherman gives a 10-second answer. But our goal is to get through as many meaningful questions as we can in the time that we have, so that people can have actionable improvements for their resumes and give them hopefully odds in their favor. So here we go. We're talking about what it takes to write a great resume. And I'm going to just start hammering away, Sherman, and you enlighten us the best that you can. So here we go. How much time do we have for a recruiter or a hiring manager to look at our resume?
Well, I mean, in the simplest way to tell it is, think of it as, using the Tinder app. You swipe left and you swipe right. I mean, that's really how much time your resume is in front of the recruiter or the hiring manager for the very first time. They're looking for certain things, and if they don't see it, then you're going to be in the rejection pile. If they see it, then they'll say, okay, I'll study it some more, because this is definitely somebody that I think I want to talk to. Not so much I want to talk to, but I think I want to talk to. And because of that, you have to be very strategic in terms of how you position your resume. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, as somebody who has an MBA from NYU, I mean, it's kind of like doing a marketing campaign. You have to position everything correctly. You have to be to the point. You have to grasp that. I mean, it's kind of like reading a mystery novel. If it takes 50 pages just to get to that first murder, you're going to lose everybody.
Yep.
And that's really is the key is how do you do it so that they pick the first impressions as yes rather than no.
Yeah. Okay. And we'll get into this in a little bit later, but if they do like the first impression, how long, as you put it, I might want to talk to you, right? You make the I might want to talk to you pile. Tell me more. I'm interested. I'm going to look with more depth and more detail at the resume. How much time do you think we have at that phase? How long are they reviewing the resume?
You're probably looking at about 5 to 10 minutes, more so on the 5-minute side than on the 10-minute side, because they're still in that decision-making process. And right now it's where if I were hiring, I would start checking off boxes. I have my wish list, which I put on the job posting, and here's a list of things that I want to make sure that the person is capable of doing. And then I further separate the two piles from I wish or I might interview this person to let's put this person on the interview list. Let's do initial call or initial interviews.
Yeah, so let's go back over this. So love the comparisons to Tinder or a mystery novel. We don't want to wait till page 50 for the murder. Swipe left, swipe right. So there's a marketing challenge, as you're saying, to get those first impressions, right? Very important. And then if you pass that initial challenge, maybe we get 5 minutes or so where hopefully we're starting to check off the boxes of the recruiter, hiring manager, whoever's involved at that point with our resume. Really interesting to kind of think through. So let's put a box around that. So I want to, I want to get somebody's attention. And once I have their attention, I want to hold it for those few minutes and get them to read and want to talk to me, put me in that initial screening pile, as you're saying. So what do you think is the most common or some of the most common mistakes that people are making along this journey?
I mean, I think the most things that I saw is people just throw a bunch of stuff into their resume. I don't have the time as a hiring manager to sort through your resume trying to find the nuggets. It's a little bit like, I'm sorry, you have to be blatantly obvious to me that you are the person that I should hire. Um, and I think that's really the number one thing that I've seen. The second thing that I've seen that is also kind of, I guess, not very good is it's not knowing how to position your accomplishments within your resume. I mean, because as I've been telling people, we read from top to bottom, left to right. It's a little bit of, you don't want to hide your accomplishments on the last sentence of the third bullet point. I may not have gotten that far, and I said, forget it. This person is out.
Yeah.
I just missed a great person. But so there's a bit of an organization skills that you have to use, and you have to think really strategically. Not as you as the applicants, but think about you as the hiring manager. If I'm reading this resume, what do I need to do to get that first impressions right? And you have to think about your word choices. You have to think about where in that resume should this one item be positioned. And as I was telling people, some of the stuff, I mean, they're interesting, but it's you want to grasp them. I mean, you're kind of going back to the Star Wars metaphor. I mean, if you watch, episode 4, it doesn't start in the beginning. I mean, the movies start in the middle of a chase, and you have to kind of have that kind of impressions when you create that resume. You want the person who looked at it to keep reading it until they finished.
Yeah.
Instead of read the first couple of things and go, oh, no, I don't know about this. No, this person's out.
I love it. And there's a lot to think about there. And I think you've said it more than once here, as you're crafting the resume, you've got to be strategic. And I love a couple of the things you're saying here is really you're saying, put yourself in the shoes of someone else who is looking through many resumes, and don't make them work hard to find the most important things that, I think in your mind, ideally align essentially with your marketing strategy about what is most impactful and important about you as the person applying. Then these other details that you're bringing up that are interesting, reading left to right, top to bottom, it almost brings kind of this user experience element to looking at a resume. Where's the eye tracking going and things like this, right? And so what that's led me to ask you now is, sounds great. Let's empathize with our hiring manager or talent acquisition person. Let's be aware of all that. But how the heck is the applicant supposed to know the format that they're seeing the resume in?
I mean, there's a couple of ways you can do it. I mean, one way to do it is cheats. LinkedIn has millions of resume. They call it a profile, that is really your resume. Take a look at how other people does it. The other things that I like to do, and I like to tell people to do, is really to put your accomplishment first. I mean, and you have to put it like the very beginning of a bullet point if you're using bullet points. I mean, I would definitely read more if, let's say I work for a company and the company is, is in the middle of a transformations, and I saw somebody who can, let's say, reduce time to market by 50% as the first things that they write. I'll definitely be more inclined to read about this person's resume than if you buried it in the last line of that bullet point, even though the bullet point could be just one line. I mean, it just doesn't grasp you like, boom, here it is. This is what I've done. Um, and I think that's really is the key there. And the other things you have to remember is that the resume is there to do two things. One of them is to support that position you're applying for. It's a constant reinforcement of that. This is why I'm good for this positions. And the other thing is a constant reinforcement of who you are. I mean, like if you're an awesome problem solver, you can brag about it being an awesome problem solver. You show it. And if you can't do that, then you're not an awesome problem solver. Think of something else.
I love it. Okay, that's good. That's the line right there. That's the best line so far. Really good stuff. I mean, even down to the details, going back 2 steps from what you just said, not the last part, which is great. This narrative, I think, is what you're saying, right? This narrative of who I am as the applicant and essentially how that fits or serves the job specifically that they're applying for. But what I love is you've got some details here, and it makes me wonder how many folks are truly thinking about it. They might get a resume review, and it might say, quantify your accomplishment, right? Okay, so now you've got 3 bullet points, and they've quantified their accomplishment. But they might have said, bullet point 1, managed 5 people. Bullet point 2, yada, yada, yada. Bullet point 3, proudly did whatever, reduced time to market of 50%. And if I'm hearing you right, your point is bullet point 1, those first 3 or 4 words, basically you need to get me to say 50% time to market reduction, right? Don't make me work hard. Put them front and center. Am I hearing that right?
Right.
Yeah.
That is absolutely correct. And like, and everybody loves numbers, and everybody love people who can solve problems. So I mean, like, so your bullet point could be structured in a way that is like a mini story that you're telling. This is my accomplishment. This is what the problem is. This is how I solve it.
Hmm.
And if you can do that, I mean, I'll be more inclined to read your resume because it's kind of go, oh, you're telling me a lot of things, but you're not telling me enough things that I can figure out myself. Because at the end of the day, I mean, like there's that thing, the undercurrent things that the ultimate objective of a resume is so that you can talk to somebody.
Yeah.
So you have to tease them. You have to kind of give them just enough information to say, I want to find out more. I want that sequel, like, and so go, I need to be on the phone with this person. I need to find out how they did it.
Thanks, Sherman. No, I like that because I wonder if a lot of folks are thinking about a resume as the way to get a job. I love the way you're saying it. The resume is the objectives. The resume's objective is to get to talk to somebody. And that is absolutely correct. Very well said. I love that. Okay, so we want this beautifully laid out resume. We want to put the important, quantifiable, impactful things in the most obvious place so that it's at the front of the first bullet point if they read my PDF resume, or it's still at the top of the first bullet point if it's parsed into some other tool. Either way, we want it to be as obvious as possible. So now we're thinking about that prototypical job searcher you mentioned. They're looking for 6 months. They're looking for a year. Holy crap. Okay, how do I do this over and over and over, hundreds or thousands of times, and actually maintain what you're talking about? So a couple questions in that area. First of all, is the 1-page rule, or my resume should be about a page or not more than a page, is that still a thing? Is that relevant?
I think it's relevant if you're just starting out. I mean, I've seen people who who are either just graduated or they have their first job, and then they fill two pages of stuff in there, and I go, "Are you serious?" I mean, that means you just have a lot of fluff in there. I mean, unless you says, I'm a co-founder of a startup, then that's a totally different story. And for people who have been at it for quite some time, I think your resume should be somewhere between 1 to 2 pages, because you don't have to put everything into your resume. I mean, some of this stuff like ancient history. I mean, do you really want people to know what you did 40 years ago, as your first job? Probably not. You probably want stuff that are more recent, and in a way, I mean, like the structure of the resume changes because, if you're a first time job seeker, you just got out of your first job. Um, you tend to have you tend not to have a whole lot of things, and you trying to, to a certain degree, stretch out so that it takes up the entire page. Whereas if you're a mid career, you have too much, and so what you want to do is you really want to focus on some of the things that some of the real big accomplishment, because by that time you would have some really big accomplishment that you're really proud of, that you can talk for days if they allow you to do so.
Right.
And you want to kind of focus on those because that's because it kind of illustrates a lot of things. Illustrate your skill, illustrate your experiences, illustrate how you think, and a lot of things that a hiring manager at that level will love to look at.
That's a pragmatic response. Thanks for that. And it also hit me while you were talking that, if you are early career, you're likely applying for an associate. I don't know how else to say what I'm trying to say. Entry level associate type work. So they would also, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get inside the mind of, as you said earlier, think about who you're sending this resume to, who the hiring manager is. And so it would make sense to me that if you're looking at an entry level position, they would expect someone who has less work experience. If you're looking at an SVP position, you would hopefully expect somebody who has a page and a half worth of work history to get to this point, something like that. I think that makes a lot of sense. So thanks for that answer. We've got this huge body of work. Let's say someone mid-career, later career, something like that. This huge body of work in work experience. Like you said, we don't need to include when we worked at the ice cream shop when we were 15, probably in our resume. But we've got I'm sure you've seen it. But unless you want to be the general manager of an ice cream shop, that may or may not really be relevant. So I've got this huge body of work. How do I tailor all the experience that I've got to the job I'm applying for in an efficient way? In other words, I've got a huge amount of work experience, but each job that we apply for is going to have different requirements. So how do I take my experience and practically put that into a resume in an efficient way?
So I mean, the way I would do it, and I've been telling people to do this, and I've done it myself, is really, to create two resume. One of them that has everything you have ever done, from your first job to your current job. You're still very strategic in terms of how you word that resume, how you word that positions, how you word your accomplishments. And then from there, you know, when you see something that you like, then you take that resume and you have to be pretty ruthless. Kind of like an editor for a book. You start yanking things out. You have to keep asking your questions. How does does this have any bearing on the position that I'm applying? Does this have any bearing on the skills and the experiences that I want to show off for this particular position that I'm applying? It's like yanking things out. And as part of the process, you may have to do some rewriting. You may have to expand on some of these things a little bit more so that it's more tailored to that positions. Um, but that's kind of how I would do it. And I would, because you already have something in place. It's not like, oh my God, I have to do this all over again. It's going to take me another 3 days. Now you can get it down to like 45 minutes.
Yeah. No, great advice. Have a large master resume of all the things that you've done, and as you're applying, tailor what's there. And I love the word ruthless editing. and then tailor it so that you can turn it down to a manageable job. And I like this, you just threw out a number of 45 minutes as an example. I like it because you're thinking about, again, these like sit down, apply for a couple of jobs, do a really good job at that, do it really well for a couple, take a break. Okay, right? Come back again and go through this process again. That's a very scalable process, the master resume. I love that. How important are cover letters?
Cover letter is really important, and the reason for that is because it's really complements what you have on your resume, and cover letter is doing things in very different ways. I mean, resume tends to be more bullet point driven. Cover letters is more narrative. So in a way, you are telling that same story again, but in a narrative way, and you can there are certain things you can say, there are certain things you can emphasize when you write something in the narrative manners that you can do in the bullet points. Bullet points, at the end of the day, bullet points still require me as the reader to do some mental connections from one bullet point to the next bullet points. Where the resume basically is kind of laid it out there as this is what I've done.
Love it. Okay. Yeah, thanks for that answer. That's great. The narrative version of what maybe bullet points that are making them do the work to put those dots, connect those dots together. Love that. Let's see. What is probably have time for one more question. Yes, I think this is a good one. Okay, last one on the resumes. If people have gaps in their employment history, they've been laid off or whatever that is, had a child, stayed home, things like this, right? How do you address that in a positive way?
Well, I mean, like the gap is kind of like the elephant in the room, right? I mean, so the first thing you do is you poke a hole in it. You just put it in the resume. Like whether you got laid off, whether you have a kid. I mean, most people understand when they decide to take time off for one reason or the others. I mean, especially these days where mental health and work is kind of a very visible things. I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing to say, I took 6 months off because I need to reset myself. But I don't want to, again, I mean, like that's not focus of the resume. The focus of the resume is really what you can do. So I would minimize, the the explanation of that gap to maybe a sentence, half a sentence. You don't have to go into it. I mean, people understand. I mean,
I think that's
you don't cover yourself, with a story.
no. I love I loved your first response, which was it's the elephant in the room. So just address it, poke holes in it. So if I'm hearing you right, it might be something in the cover. I'm totally winging this, so feel free to rip me apart. In the cover letter, you got a sentence that says just straight up something that frames it positively, like, after staying home for the last 9 months with my firstborn, I'm excited to get back to doing whatever.
Right, exactly. I mean, you just kind of gloss it over. I mean, like, and people go, oh, okay, yeah, whatever,
Got it.
and then because the thing is, you want them to focus back on your experience, your skill sets. Why are you excited about particular decisions? So if you can, so it's kind of like you address it, but you didn't just address it, and you're not emphasizing it. It's just there. It's kind of it's a statement.
Yep. You're being honest. You're addressing it, just giving the information, but not making it the focal point. So makes sense. And I think that's important. And I think that's important to call out because I could also see that if someone feels insecure about their gap, they might feel this need to overcompensate and talk about it on. And then it becomes, as you're saying, less than ideally the focal point of the whole process rather than why do you want to talk to me? Yeah.
Right, because I think it's just one of those things. The more you said, the more you have your foot in your mouth. Um, so it's best to not get too deep into it because the thing is that if I read a a one paragraph thing, so three bullet point thing as to why you've been gone for 9 months, my immediate thought is, is this person do I really want to hire this person?
Yeah.
Because it seems like they have some issues that it may interfere with the positions that I'm hiring.
Yeah, makes sense. No, it makes a lot of sense. As you said, if it's handled well, most folks are quite understanding these days in seeing that. So that's good to call out. Okay, I don't know how the time goes so fast on this show, but I will say tons of great information. It'll all be captured in the show notes for folks. So thank you so much for those answers, Sherman. We got through so much stuff, and we could go on much more, but in the interest of time and digestibility, we're gonna keep it there. But I ask everybody on Leadership Voyage the same final question, and so I'm excited to hear what your answer is. What is something that you've learned recently?
Well, AI is a really good tool when it comes to helping you write your resume. Because sometimes, I mean, like it's kind of like having somebody working with you, bouncing ideas off. The only thing you have to remember is that AI can hallucinate. Like one time, I did an experiment with my resume once, and it started putting words in my mouth, like reductions of 20% in blah blah blah, and I go, no, I didn't say that. I just said that I did something. I cannot quantify this. So I mean that's but it's a great tool. You just have to drive it. I mean, it's not like, do this and then it's done. Just like do this and then you can go, well, this doesn't sound very good. Do it again. And so you may spend half an hour on one positions, on one job or one bullet point, trying to get it to say close to exactly what you want it to say, but in a way that says it better than you can.
Yeah.
So that's something that I learned. And the second thing that I learned is that, mentorship is a great thing because to help others, it also kind of is a self-reflection thing. So I'm trying to help somebody with their resume, and in the process, it gives me ideas as to how I can refine my own resume.
Hmm.
How I can better focus it, because it's a little bit of, I have to know what I'm talking about to be able to help the other person. And by doing so, it kind of say, oh well, I guess I'm not talking the talk and walking the walk.
Yeah, that's great.
Let
No,
me
thanks
say
for
that.
the mentor thing. I think that's wonderful. It reminds me of teaching. If you really want to learn something, start trying to teach it to someone else. And what a good reminder for all of us. Use the AI tools to help with the resume, but remember who's driving the car, and that's we are. We are the ones driving. And I love the hallucination comment. That's a fantastic. Great job with 20% improvement. It just makes it up. I love that. Well, Sherman, okay. So for folks who are interested in connecting with you or reaching out, maybe they're interested in working with you or something. I think you had said we'd like to send them to LinkedIn. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, they can go to LinkedIn. They can direct message me from there, and I think if my email address is there, they can shoot me an email.
Okay.
That's also work. I mean, like, and I mean, I'm just doing this for fun, so.
Yep, exactly. Well, we'll put those in the show notes, the LinkedIn link and the email address. And thank you so much for sparing some time today, Sherman. Really appreciate it. I know everybody's going to get a lot out of it. So thank you. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm really glad that you stuck around for this one because it is full of pragmatic advice. And it's great to hear someone who's mentoring others, helping other colleagues with their job searches, with their resumes. And you can hear what he's learned through that experience. It's really, really nice to have people on this show who are just doing something because they want to help other people. And it's a tough job market out there, whether you're unemployed or you are employed but looking for a better opportunity. So, without any more delay, here is our episode recap. Strategically, when looking for a job, first, know yourself. Understand the culture of an organization, kind of see what you could grow into there. These are really important elements. When it comes to the job market being so challenging right now, with so many layoffs and the government layoffs as well, and this domino effect in play, it's crowded. It's going to be a long process. You're going to need persistence to get yourself through it. Then we spent the majority of our discussion on resumes. And I just had a bunch of questions. I think we ended up hitting maybe 7 questions or so. So the quick summary of those, how much time do we have for someone to look at our resume? Think of it like Tinder. It's a marketing job. Those first impressions are what matter. How long after you eventually get in the pile of I might want to talk to you? Maybe you have about 5 minutes for someone to look over what you've put together. Mistakes. Sherman says that one of the most common mistakes he sees is how applicants make others sift through their resume. Keep in mind it's my words were, keep in mind the UX. We read top to bottom, left to right. The layout is important, right? Put your accomplishments in the first bullet point at the very beginning of the bullet point. Make sure that they are apparent to the recruiter or the hiring manager. How about 1 page? He said if you're early in your career, definitely want to keep it to 1 page. But if you're mid-career or later, there's nothing wrong with going to 2 pages. As far as being efficient in the process of making your tailored resume, he said have 2 resumes. 1 is the master, 2 is the one that you're ruthlessly editing and then tailoring to the specific job you're applying to. Cover letters, he said they are very important. They should complement your resume. They're very important in telling a narrative version of all the bullet points you've got. Work gaps. Address the elephant in the room. Yes, you may have a gap in employment, but address it in a sentence, and then that's over with, and move on. So there you go. Sherman Chen bringing a lot of actionable information and advice to those of you who are looking for work. And as I've said many times here, I know that half of you who have jobs are looking for jobs. And then those of you who are unemployed or underemployed, you are looking for work as well. So hopefully this episode, even though I think it walks right up to the line of what most of the Leadership Voyage episodes have been, hopefully it's one that those of you who've listened to are able to get a lot out of it. Until next time, everybody take care.